Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at how to really truly transform your spaces. Forget just paint for a minute. We're taking a deep dive into, well, pretty amazing world of creative wall finishes. Think decorative plaster, think stencils. It's fascinating stuff.
It really is.
And we're unpacking these techniques, showing how a bit of ingenuity can totally redefine a room. Our starting point is this really compelling YouTube video we found.
Yeah.
It's just packed with inventive ways to add texture, add design.
Lots of aha
Moments, you know.
Definitely. And our mission for you listening is to sort of break down what's happening in that video. What are the core processes, the materials? What are the imaginative possibilities?
Right.
We want to give you more than just watching it. We want to give you those actionable insights so you understand how it's done and, maybe more importantly, why certain steps are just, well, absolutely critical for getting that professional, lasting finish.
Like a blueprint, yeah.
Exactly. A blueprint for maybe trying some of these ideas out yourself.
Okay, let's get into it. So, when we're talking about plaster and design, the stencil seems like a real hero, but maybe not in the way people usually think.
Right. These aren't just for like spray painting a quick logo. We're talking about using stencils to create these dynamic textured designs, things that literally stand out from the wall.
Depth and character.
Precisely. And the video points out there are different kinds. It's actually quite important which one you pick.
Okay.
Well, you've got these sometimes quite expensive custom ordered ones, really elaborate.
Ah, the fancy ones.
Yeah, but the thing is, they're often made from a very thin film. Delicate, they can tear easily, especially with intricate details.
Oh, right.
And the source really stresses this because they're so fine, you absolutely have to wash them after every single use. Meticulously.
Wow.
Every single time. Otherwise, those tiny lines get clogged with plaster and your next impression just won't be sharp. It'll be messy.
That sounds like a lot of work, especially for something so fragile. Is it worth it for, say, a beginner?
Well, it's a trade-off, isn't it? If you need that super intricate, precise pattern, maybe. But then you've also got the more common affordable stencils.
Okay.
These are usually much tougher, more durable, easier to handle, easier to clean. They're probably a better starting point if you're just experimenting, you know, or for bigger, bolder patterns.
Makes sense. So, okay, you've chosen your stencil.
Yeah.
What's next? The wall itself, I imagine, can't just slap plaster onto anything, right? Surface prep.
Oh, absolutely non-negotiable. Surface preparation it's the foundation.
Yeah.
You cannot cut corners here if you want it to last.
Okay, so what does that involve?
First up, thorough sanding. You need to get rid of any sharp bits, any imperfections on the wall, make it smooth, like a blank canvas.
Got it.
Then, maybe the most crucial part, dust removal. All of it. Dust is basically the enemy of anything sticking properly.
Right, adhesion.
Exactly. Leave dust and your plaster, whatever you put on next, and you just won't bond right. You'll get peeling, cracking, disaster down the line.
Ugh, nightmare.
Totally. So after dusting, the final prep step is applying a deep penetrating primer. Roller, brush, doesn't matter too much how you get it on.
Okay.
But this primer does three things at once. It gets the last bits of dust, it degreases the surface, and it actually strengthens the wall itself. Makes it ready for the plaster. That triple action is why it's so essential.
Right, prepares the ground. De-dust, degrease, strengthen. Got it. So wall prepped, stencil ready. Now the fun part, the techniques. The video showed one using tinted lacquer that looked amazing. How does that work?
Yeah, this is where the artistry really comes in. So after priming and drying, you apply this tinted lacquer. The video used a beautiful dark green emerald color. Stunning.
Sounds lovely.
But here's the key challenge, and the video gives a great solution. Avoiding visible transitions. Patchiness. You know, where the lacquer dries faster in some spots?
So yeah, that can look messy.
It really can. So the solution is about regulating how the surface absorbs the lacquer. If your wall is too thirsty, basically, you first apply a layer of clear, transparent lacquer. Let that sink in. It seals the surface a bit, evens out the absorption.
Ah, clever. Like a pre-treatment.
Exactly. Then, when you apply your tinted lacquer over that, it goes on much more uniformly. No dark and light patches.
Makes sense.
And the application itself, it's about carefully rubbing it in, making sure you cover every spot. And having a small, fine brush handy for any touch-ups, any little white spots you missed. Consistency is key.
So, regulate the surface first, then apply evenly. That's a great tip. What about tinting the plaster itself? Is that an option instead of the lacquer?
It is, yeah, the source mentions that. You can definitely tint the plaster material directly. That gives you a different look, though.
How so?
Well, the color is in the plaster, sort of embedded. It's usually a more solid, opaque look. The tinted lacquer technique gives you that surface shimmer, that depth, almost a translucent quality over the base. Depends on the vibe you're going for.
Gotcha. Two different routes to color. Okay,
Right.
so from that subtle depth to something completely different. The age wall effect. Making new look old. How on earth do you do that convincingly?
This one's really cool because it flips the usual goal on its head. It's all about embracing imperfections, suggesting history.
Okay.
The material is usually an artistic plaster, often grayish, kind of cement-like in color, and it's usually adhesive-based, so it sticks really well.
Right.
But here's the unique process. You put the stencil on the wall, and then you spackle over it.
Over the stencil, not through it.
Exactly, over it. Because you're not aiming for crisp, perfect lines like usual.
Ah.
You want a subtle silhouette, a hint of a pattern, like something you just uncovered under layers of old paint during a renovation, that found look.
Wow, okay, so you're deliberately obscuring it, making it look worn by time.
Precisely. It's evocative, not precise, creating that feeling of history, of layers.
Oh, yeah, that's the totally different way of thinking about stencils.
Like-
Very artistic. Does it need sealing or waxing afterwards?
Interestingly, no. The source points out that this technique often skips the final wax or lacquer. It relies on just a good, white, deep penetrating primer underneath for strength. The finish is simpler, letting that raw texture and the ghost of the pattern be the focus. It looks authentically aged that way.
Simple finish, complex look. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, something that sounds incredibly creative, using fabric as a stencil. On a door. Tell me about this one.
Yeah, this door project is a fantastic example of just thinking outside the box. Resourceful.
Okay.
So the problem was this old door, probably
Yeah.
particle board, covered in layers of old, thick oil paint.
Right, the kind you think you have to spend days stripping.
Exactly. But instead of stripping, which is messy, hard work, the solution was to use a special primer. One formulated with quartz sand mixed in.
Quartz sand, why?
It creates this gritty texture like fine sandpaper. It gives the new layer something to really grab onto right over the old paint. Brilliant time saver.
That is smart. Okay, so primed over the old paint, then what?
Then, just regular starting spackler putty, apply it all over. And here's the thing. No need to make it perfectly smooth.
Yeah.
A bit of texture is actually good for the final effect.
Less pressure for perfection, nice. And the stencil itself. An old curtain.
Seriously. An old curtain from the 1950s, apparently chosen for its pattern. Super inventive.
Fabric. Isn't that hard to work with? Like keeping it straight?
Oh, definitely challenging. Fabric wants to stretch, wrinkle, deform, so you have to be incredibly careful applying the plaster through it, making sure the pattern stays true and doesn't get distorted. Patience is definitely required.
I bet.
But there are upsides. Fabric can cover a much larger area in one go. The video mentioned maybe 2 square meters, way bigger than most standard stencils.
Ah, okay.
And unlike those delicate film ones, you don't have to wash it immediately after every single application. That saves a lot of time and hassle.
True, but probably not for huge walls, right?
Right.
A wet curtain sagging.
Exactly. The source notes it's best for smaller projects. Doors, feature panels, a big wet curtain on a wall would be unwieldy, deform too much, need constant drying, impractical for large scale.
Makes sense. Use the right tool or repurpose curtain for the right job. Was it durable, though? This curtain stencil door?
Amazingly so. The video highlights that the door looked perfect, completely intact for 2 years after it was done, which really shows the technique works.
Wow. 2 years is solid proof. And the final look.
It was finished with pink paint, and then metallic gold accents were added just in specific areas using a small semi-sleeve roller. Gave it this really custom, elegant touch. Just shows what you can do with unexpected materials.
From old curtains to, well, the kitchen sink, almost. Let's talk about bathrooms. Creating a durable stone effect. What was the surprising stencil this time?
Okay, this one might be my favorite for sheer unexpectedness. The stencil used to create a stone effect suitable for a bathroom was a common plastic dishwashing rack.
A dish rack? You're kidding.
You know, one of those thick, dense plastic ones. And think about it, what are the advantages? It's super durable, it won't break, it won't tear easily. Really easy to handle compared to delicate film.
I can actually picture that. Durable, easy to clean.
Exactly. And here's a great practical tip from the source that applies more broadly too. These dish racks are cheap, right?
Yeah, usually.
So buy several of them, 2, 3, 4. That way, when one gets clogged with plaster, you just grab the next clean one, no stopping constantly to wash it out. Huge time saver on a bigger job. Streamlines the whole thing.
That's genuinely brilliant, turning a cheap kitchen item into an efficient tiling tool. Okay, so you use the rack as a stencil.
Yeah.
How do you get the paint to look like actual stone?
It's all about layering the paint cleverly, using acrylics usually. First, you put down a lighter base color over the whole textured surface. Then, you apply a slightly darker shade over that. The key is how you apply it, maybe dry brushing, maybe wiping it back so the darker paint settles into the recesses, the grout lines left by the rack, and highlights the raised stone shapes, creates that natural depth and shadow.
Mimicking how light hits real stone.
Exactly. It's about creating that illusion of form. And if you want to get really detailed,
Yeah.
the source suggests you could even hand paint variations onto each individual stone with a fine brush, add little speckles, veins, make it incredibly realistic and personalized.
Wow. That takes dedication, but the result must be amazing. Okay, so dish racks, curtains, custom films.
Yeah.
The range is incredible. We've gone from super delicate to really robust everyday item.
We really have. It just shows the sheer breadth of creativity out there.
So let's try and bring it all together. What are the main things you, our listeners, should take away from all this?
I think there are a few key things. First, creativity with stencil materials is, well, boundless. Look around you. Inspiration might be in the kitchen or the sewing box.
Yeah, definitely.
Second, and we keep saying it, but proper surface prep is non-negotiable. Sanding, meticulous dusting, priming. That's the foundation for success. Seriously, don't skip it.
The boring bit that makes the magic happen.
Pretty much. And finally, just how adaptable these techniques are. You can achieve such different looks, aged, modern, stone, subtle textures on walls, doors, even in bathrooms, often with surprisingly simple methods once you understand the principles.
It really feels like you've given us a mental toolkit now. A whole set of ideas to look at our own spaces differently, right? See potential where maybe we just saw a blank wall before.
Hopefully, it's about seeing that hidden potential, yeah, and materials and techniques.
So building on that, maybe a final thought for everyone listening.
Yeah, given these really ingenious approaches we've talked about, the curtain, the dish rack, what everyday object might you rethink? What could you repurpose as a unique stencil for your next creative project at home?
Ooh, good question. Makes you look at things differently, doesn't it?
Exactly. Inspiration is everywhere once you start looking with those stencil vision eyes.